Conversations with a Tree by Jane Warren Campbell, read by the author. Chapter 3, starting with the poem, We Are One. I dance with the eagle as my mind's eye soars over the land. I vibrate with the spirits of the earth, and I know that we are connected. I am the eagle. I am the blade of grass swaying in the breeze. I am the water rushing over rocks to meet again in the great ocean. I am the heartbeat of all life as it pulses ever closer to Creator. I am your brethren. Feel me dance upon your soul and recognize that we are one. Chapter 3. What? Plants can read my mind? With the arrival of winter, I found myself more housebound, and it seemed like a good time to start putting all my wonderful tree conversations into a book. Despite the depth of my familiarity with Henrietta and George, telling a greater audience that I talk to trees created some hesitation within me. I am not someone who needs proof outside of my own awareness. I have always believed anecdotal evidence because I trust that people know what they are experiencing. However, it is easy to understand why others, who are not having the visceral experience that I am with trees, would have trouble accepting what I was saying about our conversations. For a while, that awareness created some resistance within me to declare to all the world that I talk to trees. My resolution to this dilemma was to seek out scientific evidence to prove that I am not crazy. Out of my mind, perhaps, but not crazy. Much to my delight and relief, my inquiry led to incredible research about the intuitive nature of plants. As a matter of fact, it was so compelling, I was surprised that it wasn't common everyday knowledge. The more I looked, the more it seemed synchronicity was leading me to the information that would satisfy my quest. I would turn on the radio and hear something that would grab my attention, or go online and have the same experience. I was effortlessly led to scientific studies revealing that plants hold many more similarities to the animal kingdom than we have been led to believe. One day, I stumbled upon a video of a 1979 documentary called The Secret Life of Plants. A search on YouTube will lead you to it. The Secret Life of Plants speaks at length about Cleve Baxter and his inspirational research on the hidden attributes of plants. Baxter started his career as a polygraph expert with the CIA, and it was through his work with the polygraph that he first realized the remarkable abilities of plants. His discoveries started when he was sitting in his lab one day and decided to water his plant. He had the thought to hook it up to the polygraph to see if it showed a response to being watered. To his surprise, it showed a stressful response to the cold water. He then had the idea that he would burn the plant to see how it would respond to that. What happened next was quite remarkable. The polygraph showed a clear stress response the moment he had the thought of burning the plant. He hadn't even gone to get the matches yet. The mere thought of harming the plant caused a stress response. This started a keen interest in learning more about the plant kingdom and led him to many years of research on the awareness of plants. Realizing that plants are capable of picking up on a person's thoughts, Baxter started ensuring that his experiments were random so that his thoughts would not be affecting the plant's responses to events and influencing the results. In one experiment, he placed a bowl of live shrimp over a pot of boiling water. He had set up the experiment so that the bowl of shrimp, at a randomly selected time determined by his computer, would tip into the boiling water. He then left his office and went for a walk so he would not influence the results. When he returned, the polygraph showed that his plant reacted at the exact moment that the shrimp had been tipped into the boiling water. His plant was responding to the loss of life of the shrimp. Further experiments by Baxter showed a stress response in his plant when boiling water was poured down the sink. He assumed the plant responded because there were live bacteria in the drain that were being killed by the hot water. Bear in mind that Cleve Baxter was considered an expert in his field with the polygraph, and he worked for the CIA. It's not like he would be misinterpreting the readings or coming from an airy-fairy state of mind. Bringing forward information that lies out of the greater understanding of society can be challenging. Cleve Baxter dedicated his life to research on plants and never gave up trying to enlighten us on their amazing attributes, despite much disregard from the rest of the scientific community. It seems humanity wasn't quite ready to be so at one with nature. Perhaps that explains why Matthew Silverstone, author of the book Blinded by Science, discovered a variety of peer-reviewed scientific studies that have been all but hidden within our libraries without any recognition for their findings. In Chapter 7 of Blinded by Science, Silverstone introduces another pioneer who discovered the similarities between the plant and animal kingdom, J.C. Bose. Bose was a professor of science back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, whose work was greatly dismissed by many in the scientific community. However, Bose's brilliance is evident. Even though he was the first to prove that radio waves could travel through the air and be collected at a different location, the invention of radio waves was credited to someone else 2 years later. Silverstone speculates that Bose's Indian ethnicity may have led to that discrimination. Part of Bose's discoveries was that the plant tissue and animal tissue show similar electrical response to a stimulus. Bose took this a step further, showing that even metals, what most of us would consider inanimate, will show a similar response to that of plants and animals. For example, metal will show fatigue from being overstimulated and even permanent irresponsiveness, which we would call death. According to Silverstone, Bose, quote, determined that plants were behaviorally identical to animals, unquote. In fact, Bose showed that plants are actually more sensitive than us humans. They respond to wavelengths much shorter and much longer than we can see or sense, which means that they are even more sensitive than we are. Jump ahead 50 years after Baxter's discoveries with the polygraph, and we find a few brave scientists who are willing to step out of the accepted reality about plant behavior once again. A man who is passionate about plants and their similarities to animals is Stefano Mancuso, professor of horticulture at the University of Florence in Italy. He argues that, quote, 99.9% of a plant's biomass behaves as animals do, unquote. An article posted on The Guardian's website quotes Mancuso as saying, humans have 5 basic senses, but scientists have discovered that plants have at least 20 different senses used to monitor complex conditions in their environment, unquote. For example, they can, quote, measure humidity, detect gravity, and sense electromagnetic fields, unquote. If plants can detect electromagnetic fields, that would explain how they sense the presence of humans. Mancuso also informs us that plants must calculate the quantity of resources to use to solve a problem. He says, quote, plants don't just react to threats or opportunities, but must decide how far to react, unquote. Evidence of this came to me in a video I once watched about a reserve in Africa that was experiencing the death of many of their deer-like animals, I forget the name, during a drought. The puzzling piece of this was, on this particular reserve, there was a certain tree that was surviving the drought, which meant that this herd would have plenty of food to eat as opposed to other areas where most of the vegetation had died. Despite this, they found animal after animal dead on the ground without any evidence of predation by another animal. They were in perfect looking condition, but dead. They were so puzzled they called in a team of scientists from the nearby university that were, over time, able to figure out the problem. The trees were being overgrazed because there were so many animals feeding off them, and they were the only vegetation available. As a result, the scientists found that the trees started producing so much tannin that the animals grazing off them weren't able to digest the food and they died. Not only that, the team discovered that the trees that were being overgrazed were sending a chemical signal to the nearby trees that weren't being overgrazed. The result was all the trees started producing toxic levels of tannins, whether they were being overgrazed or not. This is a powerful example of the intelligence that Mancuso refers to. Under normal conditions, the animals could graze the trees without any harmful effects. It was only when the survival of the trees themselves was threatened that they produced such high levels of tannins. An article on National Geographic website states that New Botany is suggesting, this is in a quote, that plants are sensitive and problem-solving, but bypass the need for self-consciousness and brain activity that we assume is necessary for intelligence, unquote. This ties in with what Henrietta has said about being a tree. They accept what is while holding the energy of love. In a sense, they don't have the self-consciousness that would make something right or wrong. This, however, does not mean they don't have intelligence. The article goes on to say, quote, people who think that plants show intelligence are often accused of being anthropocentric, believing that plants are behaving like humans. The philosopher Daniel Dennett marvelously reposted that critics of this theory are cerebrocentric, believing intelligent behavior is not possible without the infinitely superior human brain. What the new work shows is that plants, by means we do not yet fully understand, are capable of behaving like intelligent beings. They are capable of storing and learning from memories of what happens to them, unquote. This defense of plant intelligence is coming from a well-educated man. Dennett holds a BA in philosophy from Harvard and received his Doctor of Philosophy at the University of Oxford. At the time of this writing, Dennett is the co-director of the Center for Cognitive Studies at Tufts University. His accomplishments include being named 2004 Humanist of the Year by the American Humanist Association. Further proof of the intelligence of plants comes from Susan Murch, Associate Professor of Chemistry at the University of British Columbia, Okanagan. I was delighted that a fellow Canadian is offering groundbreaking work in the acceptance of intelligence in the plant kingdom. Murch is also the Canadian Research Chair in Natural Products Chemistry. She is fascinated by the, quote, chemical connection between plants and human brains, unquote, and has made some remarkable discoveries in her work. One study, published in The Lancet in 1997, reveals that the herb feverfew and St. John's wort, quote, produce hormones such as melatonin and serotonin, which humans use to modulate sleep and mood, unquote. Murch found that suppressing those hormones in plants with drugs that are prescribed to humans, such as Prozac, affected the plant's development. The root system in particular was irregular. This is fascinating because it is speculated that the root system is the area of intelligence in a plant. Murch's work caught the attention of Anthony Truvas, senior plant scientist at University of Edinburgh. Truvas describes intelligence as, quote, the ability to sense one's environment, to process and integrate such sensory perceptions, and decide on how to behave, unquote. When we think of animal behavior, it is easy to see that the definition applies. If plants respond in the same manner, Does it mean they are intelligent as well? Monica Gagliano of the University of Western Australia may have the answer to that question. She has shown such intelligence in plants with some fascinating research. She decided to use the mimosa plant with methods that are used with animals to determine the ability to learn. She used the mimosa plant because it has a reaction to touch that is easy to track. The plant has a series of leaves along each stem that will fold together when touched. That is, when they feel threatened, they will pull in their leaves. Gagliano set up an experiment where she dropped the plant several feet onto a piece of foam to soften the landing. The plants initially responded to the fall by curling up their leaves. However, after being dropped only 4 times, the plants stopped responding, which showed they no longer felt threatened. They had learned that the drop was not harmful, so they didn't need to react. To test that the plants weren't simply fatigued, which may have led to the lack of response, a different stimulus was applied, to which the plants showed their usual stress response. The amazing thing is, the plants remembered what they had learned up to 50 days later. Despite her evidence being solid, Gagliano's work was refused publication because she had the words plant learning in her title, which she refused to change. According to Gagliano, that is just what happened. Although it is not accepted by all, scientists is starting to show that despite not having a brain, plants do show intelligence. Going back to Baxter, whose studies have shown that plants have the ability to know our thoughts, is it such a stretch to think that we can do the same and know the thoughts of plants? Of course, you know my answer to that. I believe that my ability to receive information from trees is twofold. First is my inclination to believe that anything is possible. I know that we don't know everything there is to know. Secondly is the awareness that as the vibrational level of the earth increases, the veil of forgetfulness is thinning between the life we are living now and past life experiences. More and more in my business doing clearing work with people, I am seeing past lives having a strong influence on people's current reality. We are unconsciously remembering information from past lives. I believe that explains what is happening for me in my deep feeling connection to nature. It is a remembering of times when humanity lived more connected to the land. For example, I had a lifetime in Lemuria where I swam in the ocean and communicated with the dolphins. Perhaps it is that lifetime and others like it that create an unconscious awareness within me of our ability to connect with the natural world that surrounds us. In the evolution of our beliefs, we have moved from thinking the earth was flat to realizing it is round, to thinking that atoms were the smallest unit of matter, to the discovery of quantum physics. We continue to discover the minute world of the invisible, such as quarks, and the potential that atoms are black holes. The more we discover, the more we realize we weren't seeing the whole picture. Without being open to the idea of Henrietta talking to me, of course I never would have made the connection. Instead, I became aware of the incredible and complex natural world that we are a part of. Perhaps soon, experiences such as my visceral connection to the natural world will be well understood as part of the unity consciousness, meaning we are connected to all life. Henrietta spoke of this connection one day in our conversation. She said, "Long ago, in the times of Lemuria, you were at one with nature. Those were times of peace. For when you are connected to that nature, the nature of being human in full understanding of your earthly connection, then you have no desire to cause harm to anything or anyone. You are connected to the heart of nature and all life. And we say that all life has a heart nature. To think that nature exists in this perfect balance when unhindered without wisdom is truly foolishness. The times that you are moving back to will embrace more of this understanding. It seems, perhaps because of my sensitive nature, that I have a connection to that heart nature of all life. An indication of that came from an experience I had long before I started talking to trees. It took me completely by surprise. It happened back in the late 1990s. I was offering healing sessions at a health fair when someone opened a book with pictures of water crystals photographed by Dr. Emoto of Japan and said, "Look at this, Jane." I immediately burst into tears and had to ask her to close the book because I was with someone at my table. My only explanation is that the images of the water crystals touched on some deep awareness within my soul of a profound recognition of the beauty and sacredness of the natural world. As I went on to gather evidence that might explain and support my connection to nature, I was delighted to receive this information from Georges. As I approached him one day, he connected with me full of joy and happy to greet me. I then asked him how a tree could have such a personality. His answer is fascinating and represents a level of knowledge and understanding that is far beyond the norm of our reality, but resonates as profound truth for me. It also supports Cleve Baxter's work and may explain the source of intelligence for all plants. Here is his answer. Why would a tree not have such personality? It is a part of life, like everything else. Not all intelligence comes from the brain. So I asked, where does it come from? It comes from the field. And then I asked, how does personality come from the field? The personality of a tree does not come from the field. It comes from the energetic makeup of the particles that make up tree. Your science has proven that animals have intelligence beyond what was previously understood. For example, experiments with crows show an intelligence that has surprised the scientists. It seems to surpass the relative size of the brain. So perhaps not all intelligence comes from the brain. There is intelligence in life itself. There is intelligence in a plant, and it has no brain. Your experiments have also shown that plants respond to human thought. How can this be without a brain? And so, to take it a step further and state that plant life has personality is really not a big stretch. To address the intelligence of a plant to respond to its environment, including the thoughts of humans, is to realize that all life is connected. One thing does not happen without affecting another thing in this environment. Eventually, this ripple effect passes throughout the entire earth. Can you see here the significance of every thought? As humanity begins to awaken to what is beyond the understanding of the third dimension, more and more will open to this understanding. The personality is an extension of this intelligence. Animals have personalities, and plants do as well. A plant's personality is based on the particles that come together to make up that plant and what those particles have been before. Your quantum physics is now showing that all matter comes out of the field. When matter is destroyed through death, then those particles return to the field to become something else. They carry the resonance of that which they were before, and therefore that becomes part of the personality of the new creation, be it a plant, a person, or a snake. All life has its own particular character. There is the character of the species and, more minutely, the character of the individual that is part of the species. This is true of plants, animals, birds, rocks, water. When you consider that all of this planet consists of water, and the proof that has also been shown in science that water holds intention, then it can be easier to understand how matter holds character or personality. It is all very simple if you don't complicate it. You have to discover what you do not know. Those with an open mind and a willingness to listen with a different aspect of their human self are those who discover the unknown. Just as with Einstein and other discoverers, it is the willing mind that is open to receiving what was previously forgotten that can bring forth these intangible knowings. With that, George and I exchanged a few more words, and then he seemed to withdraw out of the joyful dancing personality and went back into being tree, still and silent. It was the first time I had experienced the exchange end in that way. George's reference to intelligence coming from the field was also told to me by Henrietta. I once asked her how she could have such wisdom and intelligence to share with me, being a tree after all. Her answer was that she pulled her knowing from the field. She added that humans have this ability as well. We have just forgotten. She said that those who channel like I do access information from the field, but simply are not aware of it. A few days later, I was on YouTube watching a presentation by Greg Braden, filmed in Italy in 2007, and he said something that fascinated me. He told his audience that he had been invited to a scientist's lab where Einstein's brain was stored. Scientists had kept Einstein's brain, thinking that because of his intelligence, it might look different than most people's brains. It turns out there was no significant difference, but that is an aside. Braden informed his audience that the scientists in this particular lab were researching the possibility that memory is not stored in the brain at all, but instead our memories are retrieved from the external field. They speculated the brain is more like an antenna that would retrieve memories from the quantum field, much like tuning into a radio station. It certainly seems to confirm what Henrietta and Georges shared with me. It also would explain how all things are connected and how I could know the thoughts of trees and they could know our thoughts. We are all swimming in the same great field of information and potential. This material may shake up our concept of reality, yet science is always leading us to a deeper understanding of what reality truly is. To bring you information about quantum research and all that it is revealing about the hidden aspects of life, I turn to another fascinating YouTube video based on the book, The Holographic Universe. In part 2 of the video, it talks about the research of a brain scientist named Dr. Carl Lashley, who, in the 1920s, found that, quote, no matter what portion of a rat's brain he removed, he was unable to eradicate its memory of how to perform complex tasks it had learned prior to surgery, unquote. This again supports the idea that memory is not stored in the brain. Jump ahead almost 100 years, and we find ourselves exploring quantum physics, which may be able to make sense of Lashley's discovery. Quantum science likens our life experiences to a hologram. Dr. Karl Pribram, who is a neurosurgeon and neurophysiologist, also studies where memory is stored in the brain. Pribram set out to solve the mystery of Lashley's discovery with rats. In short, Pribram came to believe that memory does not travel through neurons, but through, quote, impulses of light that crisscross the entire brain, unquote, like a hologram. The Holographic Universe video states that Pribram believes, quote, our brains mathematically construct hard reality by relying on input from a frequency domain, unquote. Pribram concludes that the brain's role is to receive waves from, quote, a frequency domain, unquote, and interpret that information into the physical experience we call life. It seems science is supporting what Henrietta and Georges have shared with me. In my very first visit with Georges, he addressed this, telling me, I pull love out of the field of all that is. It is like the love is floating around the ethers, and all I need do is access that and send it to you. It is very easy, and more humans are awakening to the potential of that. I was intrigued and asked if he could help us humans know how to do that. He answered, "You all do it to some degree, you just don't realize it. As you learn, Jane, the mind does not store memory, it pulls memories out of the field. Once this becomes known, it is much easier to believe that you can access love from the field or deeper wisdom or whatever you want to know. You have access to all history and also to the future. All you need to do is quiet yourself and pretend you are going into your memory to retrieve the information you seek. It is only your doubt that keeps you from being successful in this regard. You have the tools, you just need to trust that you know how to use them." Here's another message from George that may help with the understanding. Some of the information he told me is truly mind-blowing, and yet it is so simply presented it would almost be easy to overlook its significance. Trees have an overview of all life. We stand as sentinels of the physical world, and yet we are also connected to all life everywhere. We know the birds and the bugs and the wind and the rain. We know it. We don't just endure it, we know it. This is something that humans can be at one with as well, but you are not. You have been lost for so long that you have forgotten. To know these things is to be a part of their essence. I stand as tree, and yet I know that I am not tree. I am particles come together to represent tree. And bird is particles come together to represent bird. And wind is, you get it. With this knowing, I do not identify with tree as such, but with all that is. I am not tree, I am all that is presenting as tree. This is confusing for some, for many of you do not have the understanding of how life is created. You are moving into times when many are telling you that life is what you create. This is what we are referring to here. Knowing that you create with your mind will help you understand what I am saying. If you cannot connect with the reality of that awareness, it is hard for you to understand what I speak of. To grasp what I am saying, allow yourself to imagine that everything in your awareness is an interpretation, which it is. It is a visual that goes through the eyes, then is interpreted by the mind, and becomes an understanding from there. It is your awareness, your perspective, that creates your life. One person can experience a movie and come out with a totally different feeling from someone else who just watched the same movie. It triggers different emotions and pulls on different belief systems for each person. In this way, each is creating their own experience. This is what we would like you to understand. Your experience is made up of your internal systems of thoughts and beliefs. If you believe that life supports you and that mostly good things happen to you, that is what you will create in your experience. What you create out of the particles that quantum physics calls the field is good experiences. Another person could be standing beside you or driving behind you and believe that life is hardship and nothing goes right and have a totally different experience. This is just another way to say that the human experience comes from thought. The human believes that he is separate from all life and does not see that the field is all life. He has the experience of being a thing, a human that believes it is separate from the rest of creation, whereas a tree knows that it is not a thing. It is just the particles of all life coming together to appear as a thing. It appears as a thing because a human believes it is such. What the human believes, the mind will create for the human to see. A tree presents as tree, but does not solely identify as tree. It identifies as all that is presenting as tree. Place your hand on a tree and the separation will not be so strong. You will feel the connection. You will feel the tree sharing itself, its particles, with you, if you are open to such a feeling. If you do not believe it is possible, then you will not feel it because, again, you are creating your world. We are expanding your mind here. This is our experience as tree. It is why we can emanate so much love into the world. It is why we can be cut down en masse and not have hatred or regret. We are love particles come together to give you the experience of tree, and we love to send our energy to you. We see and know that humans need love, and so we offer it to you. If you believe that love is your experience, then you will say yes to it and receive it. We will be happy then, for we will have fulfilled our intention, which is love. The particle field in which all matter comes to life is nothing but love. This is a very new concept, and it astounded me that George would be sharing something so advanced. This information was cutting-edge research at the time when it was being offered by George, even in the field of quantum physics. Perhaps this is proof in itself of the ability to pull all wisdom from the quantum field. What stood out the most for me was the word energetic in reference to particles holding memories of what they were in a former configuration. That is not anything that I had ever heard before, so it certainly didn't come from any level of my previous awareness or learning. At the same time, it makes sense to me, similar to memories from past lives influencing one's current incarnation. It is also similar to what Bruce Lipton, PhD, shares with his readers in Biology of Belief. Lipton is another scientist who knows rejection because his findings do not fit the accepted reality. His research reveals that the environment that our cells exist in contributes much more to their regulation and response than chemical signals triggered from our body. The environment that he speaks of is electromagnetic in nature, just like our thoughts. Remarkably, Lipton explains in his book that, quote, the speed of electromagnetic energy signals is 186,000 miles per second, while the speed of a diffusible chemical is considerably less than 1 centimeter per second. That is to say, it is not just the chemical reactions in our body that influence our cells. Those chemical reactions are incredibly slow in comparison to the response to the energy environment of the cell. As Lipton points out, quote, the atom has no physical structure, unquote, in the quantum field. This validates what George said about presenting as tree, as opposed to being a tree. It seems that George understands that he is not physical matter, just as Bruce Lipton explains that, quote, atoms are made out of invisible energy, not tangible matter, unquote. This can be a lot to take in if it's a new concept, and yet it is very exciting that quantum physics is starting to prove what metaphysics has been holding as truth for centuries. And it explains how trees can tap into the great wisdom of the field, knowing that our biology is actually much more influenced by that field than the internal workings of the physical body. As I noted, recent studies are also showing that the brain responds to imagination and what we call reality in the same way. Studies reveal the area of the brain that lights up when someone is having an actual experience also light up when a person is imagining the same experience. The same parts of the brain are activated. As a hypnotherapist, I am aware that we can seemingly change reality through the subconscious, which many would call the imagination. Someone who has stage fright can be released from that fear through hypnosis by going into the subconscious and changing the experience that created the fear in the first place. So, what is real? The original experience or the released experience where the person being hypnotized is suddenly over their fear? I also read that people with split personality disorder can have a diagnosed illness when presenting in one personality that does not appear in another personality. So, a person can, from 1 minute to the next, go from having a physical condition to not having it. If our bodies are solid reality, how would this be possible? Is the illness actually manifest in the body, or does it exist in the mind? I believe quantum physics and the unfolding discoveries of the field, as well as the studies on the brain and where our reality actually originates from, provide the answer to that question. Just as the trees said earlier in this book, I believe we are particles held together by love versus the solid reality that we think we are. For me, it brings great excitement to know that we can access all the information we seek or need through our expanded awareness. By believing it is possible, we open up ourselves to the opportunity that all can access this wisdom. The benefits of being more sensitive to one's environment are described in the following message from Henrietta. She is deeply aware of the subtle shifts that we are going through and the potential to expand our reality as a result of it. There is so much I would like to share to guide you into these new times and the new energies of the earth. The trees know that the shift has happened because we are very in tune with the energetic field of the earth and all life forms upon the earth. When the shift happened on December 21st, 2012, the less sentient beings of plants and trees and many animal life forms felt the change. We are in tune with the subtle energies of the earth, and so that is why animals can know when an earthquake is coming or a tsunami. The trees, connected to this subtle energy, felt the shift on that date. It was subtle. It was not like a huge lightning clap from the sky, as you know, but it was there. It was different in resonance, and therefore in the sound and vibration of the earth. With that shift, all life forms were and are affected, including man. However, most humans are not in tune to these subtle energies and so did not consciously become aware of the change. Yet, your subtle bodies did recognize a change. If you will pay attention to the underlying feelings that are part of your everyday experience, we believe you will find that life feels just a little bit easier. For those who are aware, it was felt more clearly than for those who do not walk in awareness. If you are living mostly in the mind and not in the fullness of life on earth, then you could miss it, even though the mind is impacted by it as well. A shift really did occur. The way in which it affects matter on this earth is that all life everywhere can exist in a lighter form. Our molecules are less dense than they were before the shift. For this reason, you can see through things more than you could before. This has a double meaning, for in your English language, to see through something means that you are not fooled by the outer facade. You can see what the truth is. You can also take this more literally. The molecules that make up the objects that you identify in your life are now farther apart, therefore less dense, and so you literally can see through objects more than you could before. Most of you will not experience this in your lives because you are still holding on to the belief that nothing has changed. It is not in your experience to see through things, so you do not. But as soon as a few of you have this understanding, it will become more and more apparent to you that this is indeed the truth. Your scientists could prove this if they were attuned to do so. Objects that used to have so many molecules per square millimeter will now be less dense. This will work only if they had recorded before this time the density of life that existed before the shift of December 21st, 2012. And so, this realization is part of what also makes life easier in some ways. Life itself is less dense, and so your experiences will also become less dense, less heavy, when you allow yourselves to comprehend this truth. This is simple truth for a tree because we do not have the intellect to try to decipher the truth. We live in the field and so have awareness of what is, and that is where we derive our understanding. There is no need to decode anything. It is what it is, and that is it. That makes life much simpler for a tree and also more divine. To live as we do, without any emotional yearnings or expected outcomes, life is really quite grand. Life is just being. Nothing could ever be wrong because what is cannot be wrong. What a powerful statement I put in there. So it makes life simple and yet significant. The trees do know their purpose, and that is where the contentment comes from. There is no desire outside of being and serving in whatever way a tree can serve. Is there more that you would like to know, Jane? I said, yes, whatever you would like to tell me. Very good. We would also like to tell you about the life of planets. You see, the planets that surrounded the Earth are also shifting. All of this solar system is currently shifting. Although December 21st, 2012 was the magical date, the shift continues and will do so for quite some time. As the planets shift, the harmony that is the sound of the universe also shifts. Your scientists have discovered that the resonance of the Earth has changed. That is because she ascended into a higher dimension already, and so her frequency has changed. This is true for all life. The frequency has changed. If you could hear all life, you would know that the tone or sound of all the planets has changed. Since all matter is made of sound, you can see how this will be impacting all life, yet in a very subtle manner. This is why some humans are aware and some are not. It depends on the fine-tuning of each individual and their sensitive abilities as to how much people feel the change. So, there is a new harmonic tone in your solar system, and this is impacting all life. As you resonate at a higher frequency, you move into a higher dimension of being. And so it is that many on Earth, as they come into harmony with Gaia, are resonating at this higher frequency. This is the wonderful thing about these times. All life is rising into a higher frequency, so it makes it very easy for humans to do the same. It now takes great resistance to move up with the rest of life. Some are willing to hang on to the past enough to create that resistance, but it will become more and more difficult as more and more people move up into harmonic resonance with Mother Earth. For the trees and the natural world, there is no resistance. The very nature of most animals and the plant kingdom is to be in harmony with the earth. We follow her ley lines and her magnetic field and her rhythms. Because of this, animals and plants simply flow with what Gaia is doing. Only the human species would resist, thinking that they have a better way. Even you will not be able to resist much longer. Each generation now being born unto the earth comes into a higher frequency, so the old energies of the earth will die away, and the new harmonic beings will repopulate the earth. You can see evidence of this with the children that are being born with such knowing, and many with what you call psychic abilities. They are simply more connected, and as children, have not put up the mental parameters that would disallow that understanding. So we would invite humans to jump in and be part of the new harmonic resonance that is planet Earth. It is really quite beautiful. You have described it playfully as a pink haze, Jane, and we would say to you, that is very close to being the truth. There is plenty of evidence to prove what Henrietta spoke of regarding people becoming more sensitive and in resonance with the earth. In the next chapter, I share some unexpected research that I came upon in my quest to prove that it's possible to communicate with trees. There is an awakening happening, no doubt, in response to the higher frequency that we are living in, leading us back to the land. We are returning to our connection to the all.